camera waiting for them to, I'm going to send a paper around to sign so I can tell my museum that I've done some work tonight. So an attendance, just so we've got to keep records for grants and things like that. Good evening. Tonight's about the flags. I'm going to stress the flags of the United States. Behind me is most of the flags with all different stars. I'm going to go over them individually and tell you how we arrived at all those flags. I think it's an interesting evolution of the United States. You look at the upper left, we have the 13th star. You can turn it down, it's probably better. That machine probably won't work, but you do it all right there with the dark?
Yeah,
He'll figure it out. So we started with 13, and then as all of you know, we got 50 now, so it's an interesting evolution of how we arrived at all 50. And we had 35 at the time of the Civil War, so 2/3 of our country was there. Then the railroads came, and 1869, May 10th, and it expanded a lot more to the west, and then even to out to Alaska and Hawaii, and the trains didn't go over the ocean. I thought you knew that anyway. But it's as you look at it, it talks about our statehoods, and the statehoods are so important to, you know, is it states' rights, federal rights, and it's a real balance that we've had in the United States. I'm going to start this with a poem. I think my father always started most everything he did with a poem. He had everything memorized. I don't have it totally memorized. I am America. My birth certificate is the Declaration of Independence. I was born on July 4th, 1776. I'm a fabulous country of many things and many people. I am the United States of America. I am over 332 million souls, living souls, and the ghosts of millions who have courageously lived and died for me. I am William Penn, Paul Revere. I stood at the Lexington Green and fired the shot that was heard around the world. I am Washington, Jefferson, Hale, Patrick Henry. Bunker Hill, Valley Forge, and Yorktown are part of my heritage. I am John Paul Jones, Daniel Boone, the Green Mountain Boys, Sergeant York, and Davy Crockett. I am Generals Lee, Grant, MacArthur. I am Abraham Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address. I remember the Alamo, the Lusitania, Pearl Harbor, and Iwo Jima. Whenever freedom called, I answered that call. I have left my heroic dead in the Argonne Forest, Flanders Field, the Rock of Corregidor, on the cold, bleak slopes of Korea, in the leech-infested rice paddies of Vietnam, Desert Storm, World Trade Center, Pentagon, Washington, D.C., and the spreading greens of the state of Pennsylvania. Yes, I am the United States of America. These are the things that I am. I was conceived in freedom, and God willing, in freedom I will spend the rest of my days. I always possess the integrity, moral courage, and strength to keep myself unshackled, to remain a stronghold of freedom and a beacon of light to all those oppressed throughout our world. This is my prayer, my goal, and my wish. May God be with me, always. That's just a little bit about America, and that's what the flag stands for. So I thought that would be a nice tribute to that. As I look at some of these areas they talk about, Iwo Jima, we have an exhibit going up at the museum on Iwo Jima. You probably know Gene Logo. He was a coach at Memorial High School. He had a brother, Lenny, that died in '45 there. If you know an attorney named Norton, he was wounded twice there in Iwo Jima. You look at Argonne Forest. I lost my uncle there in World War II. Flanders Field is in World War I. They always had the poppies, and they talk about Flanders Field. So that's in every poem at Memorial Day. The cold, bleak Corregidor. That's Edgar Whitcomb was at Corregidor. If you think Edgar Whitcomb, he lived in Rome, Indiana, was our governor for 4 years. A fabulous man. Sailed around the world by himself. He wasn't scared of anything. Swam the ocean twice. Came back into the elements of war. Cold, bleak slopes of Korea. We had a reserve Marine group here, I think about 150 of them, and most reserves don't have to go. Well, they had to go. They went to 30 below at the Chosin Reservoir. And if you know Mitzeldorf, Clarence Mitzeldorf, lived out in this area, and he was one of the ones at the Chosin Reservoir. And more recently, Vietnam, and then Desert Storm. I was in Desert Storm myself, and Washington, D.C., Spreading Greens, the state of Pennsylvania. That was our 9/11. Changed our whole life. Atom bomb changed our life, but the 9/11 changed our life. We have less and less freedom. But that's all included in that poem. But that's not what we're here for today. I'm going to go backwards a little bit about the flag here. So U.S. flag, and this is your church here. It's nice you do this. It's nice for this youngster here too. I'm glad he's here. We need more youngsters here. We don't have enough of the younger age that needs to learn about our museum, about American heritage, and they don't know enough about it. But on all the flags I'm going to show you today, they have 13 red and white stripes. There's one, the one of 1794, it had 15 stripes, and they changed back to 13. And then the pointed star is usually pointed upward, and that's called a canton in the left. And all the other countries have a canton in the left upper side of the flag, and they put their emblem there. So we decided on stars, and stars have been part of that heritage in our period of time. This one, red and white. Betsy Ross made what they call the first flag, and I'll show you that in a minute. She died close to 50 years later. And we didn't adopt our first flag. It's called Flag Day, June 14th of 1777. I'll show you that flag because there's other renditions of the flag prior to that. You look at this, a rattlesnake, don't tread on me. Some guys use that on their truck, but that was 1775. They were the Marines, and they were tough guys, but they used that flag before we really had an official flag. If you look at the top left, that's 1775 to 77. That's the continental flag. Before we became, a real United States, we used that. That similar type of flag, I'll show you in the next slide, talked a lot, was part of, similar to England's flag, and the flag of, they flew mostly when they went in the India area. There's our 13 states, the second flag up there. That started in 1775, and we kept that same flag till we added 2 states at a later time. There's the Grand Union flag. That was the very first one in the top left, and we used that for quite a while, and people thought that was our flag, and that's the 1775 one. I'm not getting your way. Hopefully we'll get one here. There. And then you get the Betsy Ross flag, and that's a popular flag. She sold that, and there's some of them still around. There's our 13 flag, and that's what we really adopted as a country, and then we just jammed a bunch of stars in there. And then the 15 stars, we added Kentucky and Vermont, and we had 2 more stars, but they added a couple stripes there. And we got rid of the stripes from that time on. And so I'm going to go over the evolution of the different flags between that period of time and the evolution of our country, which is actually we have to be so proud of. This is the whole, and we'll go over each one of those to some degree. This was the flag of the East India Company. It looked just like our original flag, and that flew mostly when they were flying or going over in the Ocean of India, because there were other competitors to the English people at that time. This is our first official flag, 1775, but that called the Grand Union flag. But that was, they call it an official flag, but it wasn't voted on by the Continental Congress. Betsy Ross flag, everybody thinks that's our first flag, but and I'll give you the sort of how we had 1775, then 1777. I showed you that. Then the next one was a 15 stars in 1795. Now this isn't easy to see, but I'm going to leave it up there. The flags, you'll never see what they look like, but if you look at them, there's just tons of flags, and these are just all the different states that arrived in our country. And when I added the statistics up from about 1800 till about 1900, we added about 10% new states per decade, about 5% per decade, 10% every 2 decades, so 5% over 100 years, which increased the size of our country. Then you look later on, 1890, 1891, 1896, 1908, 1912, and then you have the last 2 right here, 59 and 60. So those are the evolution over time, but if you think of it, it's really 1800 to about 1912 that we added most of our states, and it's really who qualified for statehood. So this flag is not listed a lot of places, but in our Revolutionary War, this was the Battle of Sullivan Island. Now, if you go down to Charleston, that's a pretty big port there. It was very important, and the English came down, they thought we were going to run right over us, and they came down there, and they couldn't land at the port of Charleston Port, but they tried there's too many swamps along there for them to get in. So there's a little island, it's called Sullivan Island. It was split into, and in between the two islands, it had a little area that was deeper. It was deeper at high tide, but low tide it gained about 16 feet. But the problem is getting over the little hump to get in there. So these people, there are about 6 or 7 British ships that went down there, and they knew they were going to take us in nothing flat. We won that battle 4-1. They lost about 100 casualties, about 200. We were down to about 40. So we had that was a big time in our Revolutionary War, and this spread across the world that said that these dumb Americans beat the British at that battle, and they never beat a British ship. The British ship had too many challenges. They came down, they couldn't get protection, and they had staked them out for 2,000 troops on this island and staked them out for, a few days before they came down. They had lots of sense. They used 1/5 of the firepower that the English used, but the English were beaten, turned away. Now, John Paul Jones used this flag back in when he's on the Delaware River back in 1775, but that's not really our official flag. And this is when it was called Flag Day. Now, if you go look at the signers of Declaration of Independence, Congressman Hopkinson, I don't know his first name, but he was from New Jersey, and he helped design. It says signer of the Declaration, but he helped design that flag, and so that should have 15 or 13 stars, symbolizing our first 13 colonies. And then here it is in 1794. We added Kentucky, our neighbor, and also Vermont. So remember, they're contiguous with what we have. But that was the flag with just 15 stars until we added 20. And we added 20 in 1818. We didn't keep adding them, but then we got 7 more states over that period of time. So Vermont, right up there in 1709. You had Kentucky next to us, and those had already added, but we had Tennessee, Ohio, Louisiana, Indiana, Mississippi. So you look at Indiana, how early we are, 1816. That's an early time. So that's how we added a bunch of the states, and all of those are important in our evolution. With ground-wise, you look at the Louisiana Purchase, I think it was 1803 or 1809 with Jefferson, and you think how big that was, but I'm going to show you a couple other things that we're not really aware of frequently. But this is a lot of real estate for our country and important. Going down the Ohio River, going down the Mississippi River, it helped transportation. A lot of the colonists had come up the Mississippi River or cut through Virginia or cut through Boston down over the mountains. So then the next time was 25 stars. We had 5 more stars, 23 to 36. So Illinois, our neighbor, which is a lot bigger than us now, Alabama, Maine, Missouri, and Arkansas. So they're just going with contiguous states, spreading out a little bit more. But all those states qualified to become a state. So we added more stars at that date. And then the Sturdy Far flag in 1848, and these are the states that were added during that time: Michigan, Florida, Texas, Iowa, Wisconsin, California. And I just want to tell you something that my son sent me a tape, and I listened to it. I was very interested in it. But if you look between 1845 and 1850, do you know who the president was? And any of you? I didn't know, but it was President Polk, and he only went for 4 years. But he said, "I'm gonna get something done." Now, if you look at the purchase of Oregon, now Oregon didn't become a state till 1859. The purchase of Oregon, remember, included the state of Washington. He got that. It was owned by the English, and the English didn't want to get another war with us, so he knew he had them, and so he said, let's get that state, and he started trading them for something, but didn't give them much. That's a lot of square footage. But the other thing, we went to war down in Texas against the Mexicans, I think about 1848 or so, but we went down and won that war, and Texas became a state under his regime. So how big is Texas? During that same period of time, he got Arizona, New Mexico, and California. Can you believe the size? We always think of Lincoln and the Seward's Folly of the $7 million for Alaska, which is a lot of square footage, but what this Polk did, he wasn't known for doing anything, but he acquired Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, and then he got all the way up to California and Oregon and Washington. Look at how much square footage, nobody even heard of the guy. And he wasn't really a land mongol, but he was an opportunist, and when something happened, he made it better for the United States. Now remember, trains invented in the United States about 1827 for passengers, so they went, and they were very important, but about not until we get to 1869 did they put the Golden Stake in Utah. The Golden Stake combined the West and the East. So right now we're getting close to the Civil War. We don't quite have 35 states, but we get close to a third of all our states. There we go. So we'll just show you, we'll just summarize what we've talked about. Up and left, the Grand Union, then the 15 star in 1770, or that's 13 star, 1777. Then that's the 1795, and then we get to 1818. Added 5 more states during that period of time. And then 1819, you had another state. And I didn't want to show you all that because you just had to pop a star in there, and you got to pop it in the right place. So all those are popping stars. The rest of it's pretty similar, except for that very first and second flag there. So they all look similar. They're just adding, popping in states is what they're doing. So we get all the way here close to the Civil War, and you see there's 35 stars at 1863. So we'll go up and tell you which states were acquired during that period of time. So, boom, look at that one. Over that period of time, 1858, then 1859, Oregon added, Kansas 1861, Virginia, that's West Virginia, Trans-Allegheny. So that was a big problem during the Civil War, and so they invaded another state there. And Lincoln made them keep the 35 stars on the flag. He wouldn't let them get rid of the southern states. He didn't cut it down by cut the southerners off. Nevada. And Nevada's going to be, and Utah going to be real big out there because that's where the Continental, the Golden Stake was put in I think May 10th of 69. Nebraska, Colorado, Dakota Territory. So they pushed out of the Midwest and pushed a little bit further west during that period of time. But that's a lot because of the trains. You think the train's 1827, and the big state didn't happen until 1869, but still the trains got closely out there. The Civil War trains went about 20 miles an hour. They didn't go much faster than that. If you look at FDR, he drove around the United States in 1943 when he was looking at his industrial infrastructure, and he stopped here in Evansville, but he went down south from Washington, D.C., way down to Georgia, then all the way out close to Arizona, then came up to Colorado, and then back this way. It was an 8,000-mile trip. 89% was by train. He would only go 30 miles an hour. When he went through here, your church guy would tell me that. There's a tall guy here, was an attorney, that was a railroad nut. David Millen. He would talk to me about that all the time. His dad was a conductor on the train when it went through here, and he said he only 30 miles an hour. FDR would only go 30. And it could go faster at that time, but that's what he liked. So several presidents have had their funerals on the train, FDR including, when going to somewhere. So then you look Nevada, Nebraska, Colorado, Dakota Territory. So these are other areas that were acquired during that period of time. Then 1889 all the way to 1912. So 1912, if you get some of these flags, if you get them, they're collector's items because, they're only around for a little while. So Dakota Territory, Montana, you think how important Montana is, big sky out there. Washington became a state at that time, Oregon earlier. They split them up. Idaho, Wyoming, Utah, that's the magic stake. So the 30 years before, that's when the stake went in. And it was 12,000 Chinese immigrants that did that. They were immigrated in the 1868, and they did all the work on that train. And then they spread out to 71, 80 different train companies that they did work on. Then we got Oklahoma in 1907, New Mexico, and Arizona. So no more states after that. So now we're at 48, and that flag, you didn't have to buy a new flag for close to 50 years or 40 years. So here comes Alaska and Hawaii. Last a few months earlier in Hawaii, and that put our 50 flag star. So let me go back to the stars, and this is pretty much what we summarized there. And you look down in the Civil War. Down the Civil War about 1863, so it says 35 stars there. And so Abe Lincoln didn't let him change that, where some guys would have said, let's cut the South out, but he didn't let that happen. He knew what he wanted. He was a man of very right person, right place, right time. And that happens in the world probably because the man upstairs. But Abe Lincoln, FDR, George Washington, these are all phenomenal people that hit the right place and right time, and that's why we have such a nice country. Now, I'm going to end with a little poem, and then you're going to be able to ask me questions. And I'll tell you a little bit about that museum I've told you before. But this is another one. There's only a couple phrases on the flag, and you've heard all these. Okay, it is a soldier, not the reporter, who gave us the freedom of press. It's a soldier, not the poet, who gave us the freedom of speech. It's the soldier, not the campus organizer, who gave us the right to demonstrate. It's the soldier, not the lawyer, who has given us the right to a fair trial. It's a soldier, not the pastor, who has given us the right to worship. It's a soldier, not the politician, who has given us the right to vote. It's a soldier who salutes the flag, serves under the flag, and whose coffin is draped by the flag, who gives the protester the right to burn the flag. It is also the soldier who gave us our freedom, and that's what the symbolism is of this flag. The least we can do for our soldiers is appreciate their service for our fabulous country. So I'd like to thank you for the time here, and if you've got any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. You might turn lights on. We'll leave the flag up there. We've got, if you go to our museum, we don't have them up right now. We'll have them up soon, but we have 14 flags up on the whole side of the building, inside the building. They're pretty good sized flags. They're about the size of this cabinet. And they symbolize all the allies we had in World War II. And we have a description of what they did. Brazil, India. I can't believe what a lot of these countries did. They were part of the Allies, and they really were very important in our freedom in the 1940s. You think trains made a big difference in our world. Our little waterway here, what was that, the Erie Canal, wasn't successful because all comes the trains come around, and they said it's not worth it. And the trains have lost their prestige since the 1940s, since World War II. There have been a lot of good lobbies for the automobiles and good lobbies for the planes, and the trains lost out. Carnegie and another guy named Jay Gould made a lot of money on the trains, but if you got a train pension, if you're a railroad and got a pension, it's actually very good. If I had a train pension, my wife gets the exact same pension I get if I die. They must have been a very strong force in the early 1900s, of getting rights for men and women that worked on the trains. So, a lot of our things, it's a great country. It's not easy to get on a train up to Alaska, and definitely not Hawaii, but that's a lot of the things of how we settled this country. So any questions, and I'll summarize things about the museum if you want.
We still move almost as much freight by trains as we ever have.
They talked about a big strike about 1900, but I was living in the 70s. We had a big train strike, and I knew everything went by truck or plane or car. Well, I was as dumb as a snake. 70% of our commerce supposedly went by train in 1970s. We had a big strike then, and it showed people how important it is. And right now, you think everything's going by car or truck. The trains do a lot of it. Toyota sends everything out 500 miles or more, they send it by train. If it's less than 500, they send it by truck. But then they got to have double portage with the Toyota. But the trains are such a fabulous part of our country, and trains, the big one in the United Pacific is owned a lot by Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway. He understands that, and Norfolk Southern, we're down to about 4, 5, 6 big train companies. That guy Gates owns part of the Canadian line. But if you look at trains in Evansville, they said Chrysler, we got Chrysler in 1935. I know it's supposed to be about flags, but Chrysler got here in 1935, and they left in 59. My dad said it might just be the end of us as a city, because they were so good. They came in our big depression and recession in 1935. Nobody had jobs. They came in for some reason. They bought it from these two real good car makers from Washington and Elberfeld area. I'm blanking on their names, but they were so important, to our economy. They left in 59, but I had a guy David Coker talked at the Willard Library about why they left, and he says because of trains. He said he went to St. Louis because there's 50 trains in St. Louis. We had 4 trains here in supply and demand. And if you look at what happened in World War II, there was a lady, Bucyrus Erie. She was in charge of transporting things, and she got first on the line with all telephone calls, because with the war effort, she got to send anything anywhere. And so they'd get priorities of getting supplies everywhere. So in the war effort, we had to bring stuff in, make it, and then send it back out. How are you going to do all that? Train, water, highway. And that's why the Evansville was such a big, important part in World War II. We were away from the Japanese, away from the Germans. We were in the middle of the country, so we had to make some things here. And we made 330 products here. We had 80 different factories, and we had 80,000 employees. We were the highest per capita population working for the war effort in the world. Not Germany, not the United States, the whole world. And it was concentrated here in Evansville, and nobody would even realize that. 40,000 employees were at 3 places. The LST, 19,000, 13,000 at Chrysler, making bullets, and then 7,000 Republic Aviation. But Republic Aviation, I say 7,000, but there's lots of suppliers. Just like Toyota says 5,000 employees, got tons of suppliers going to them. So, Evansville was fabulous, and they came here just like Alcoa's come here, just like Toyota's come here, just like Berry Plastics, just like Sabe, because they know their strong work ethic. When the job 8 to 5. If it's not done, we just keep working. Even though we're a lot of German work ethic, there's a lot of good work ethic here, and industry knows that, and that's why they're here. You go in Indianapolis, a lot more paper pushers and insurance companies and things. They got Rolls-Royce up there, but big industry, you got tons of good industry around here. That's why you got good hospitals, you got good other things. You go to Madisonville, it's all revolved around Trover and the coal, and what happened, the coal dropped out, and it's a difficult economy there. If you don't have a good economy, you have problems supporting everything else. But we're supposed to be talking about this guy. Any other questions?
Well, you can make the linkage by saying, that's what we got, that's what our soldiers also gave us, was that opportunity to be enterprise. If we wanted to work, there was no lack of work, and that's what the flag represents too.
Yeah, it gives a freedom. It gives a freedom of entrepreneurship. And really, if you look at the world in 1939 and 40, we thought we were wrong. It was really a question of freedom of enterprise, free enterprise versus controlled enterprise. You look at Germany's industry, they were doing like this. Everything was dependent on the war. You look at Russia, dependent on the war effort is what they're dependent on, where free enterprise is having a hard time then, 39 to 40, and then all of a sudden we turned around because we did war effort, but then we survived afterwards. We converted everything.
I think there was something about, we were still producing women's cosmetics into the war, and Roosevelt, I guess, had a struggle to try to get that industry off the...
Well, cosmetics, but the women's holes were the most popular. If you look at the lines after the war was over, and during the war, holes is a big thing. It was, I think, making plastic, and women, everybody wanted a pair of holes, and it was, that was a thing of the time. So
they would like draw lines in the back of their legs and stuff.
Make them look like, they draw that big, thick black line. It looked like they were holes they were wearing, Evansville, you have to pass on youngsters like this young guy here. He needs to know, and we need to pass on to our nieces, nephews, grandkids, things like that. We got a lecture out to VFW 114, and we had one today on nuclear things. It was called the Hercules missile, and talked about nuclear things. Larry Head worked with them for 4 years during the Vietnam era. Give those two to them. You got to be 65, so he doesn't qualify for that. Or no, 55. It's a free lunch. We're having the VFW because we had a hole in our roof for a while. But we have lectures, and the next 4 on the series. Somebody's talking about destroyers next time. But then after that, we got a guy named Dr. Bazal that lives out by you here, and he's a heck of a pilot. He's going to talk about the planes of World War II, the Stearman, and the next one that came back to Stearman, and he's flown one for 50 years. Then after that, we've got a guy. He's a pilot that was in the Persian Gulf War. He was the first pilot that flew over enemy territory, and he's a judge up in Indianapolis, and he's going to talk the first week of September. But the last, on the 19th of December, 19th of December, I'm going to go to Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and we're going to put on the big TV screen, and there's a guy there that's 100.5 years of age, and there's only 2 P-47 pilots left living. This guy worked for NASA for 30 years, and he flew in 44 and 45, mostly over Germany, around Cologne, and we're going to talk about his experience, and he's going to be interviewed one-on-one. He's going to tell what he did, and we will interview him live. I can't get him out here because he's not healthy enough. He had a recent fall, but 100 years of age, still able to talk about it. The other guys that are important around here is Alan Sanders, and he was a P-47 pilot, died at age 99. There's another guy from over in Owensboro that we brought over and talked, and he died about 6 years ago as a pilot, P-47 pilot. But that's what we got out there is a P-47. Made 6,200, made one every 2.5 hours, 10 a day. Henry Ford made the B-24s, 1941 on to 45. He made 18,000 of those. He made one every 63 minutes. But that was Henry Ford. He went out to look at Long Beach, and Long Beach was doing one every 6 hours. He says, I can beat them. And he did. He beat them. They're making 4 a day, and he's making 23, 24 a day. But that was Henry Ford. But that process, the guy that I think is a hero of World War II is William Knudsen, Knudsen. He's a picture in our museum. But He was a president of Ford from 1905 to 1915. Then he was a president of General Motors from 1950 to 1939. FDR put 3 stars on him, made him a general, and nothing got done in the industrial infrastructure, which is what won the World War II, until he signed it. There were 3 or 4 guys from here. Ruthenberg was his good friend in the car industry in 1929. He owned Serval, and he took Mayor Dress, him, and Bainey from September of 1941. We didn't go to war till, but that's why we got these contracts. Before World War II, we had $1 million in contracts. During World War II, we had $600 million in contracts. The B-29 cost us $2 billion. The atom bomb cost us $2 billion. We had $600 million, 1/3 of what the atom bomb cost, 1/3 of what the B-29 cost. That dropped the Enola Gay, that dropped the fat boy or little boy. Yeah. Okay. Other questions about the flag? I'm not that much in depth on the flag. He said my dad did all the flags, and I said, well, I guess I wouldn't look for his lecture. I couldn't find anywhere, so I had to do all this work to figure this lecture out. You know, so it's the evolution of states. The evolution of states, and I gave you a couple poems that he'd always do. We had the same voice. Yeah.
One thing about the flag, and I get on my soapbox, and Preacher and I were talking about it earlier. One nation under God. We say that pledge wrong. Everybody says one nation under God. They put a comma in there. There is not a comma in there. It's one nation under God.
Okay, Joe, okay.
And I get on my soapbox.
But that is true. We'll have to quit our delays. We got delays in the museum, but every flag is supposed to be lit at night, and you go look. A lot of people don't use flag etiquette, and you're supposed to then take it up and down during the day if you don't want to have a light on. But everyone should have a light on. And I was in the SDAR or SAR, Sons of the American Revolution. We had we gave awards to people that did good flags. So we'd walk around the whole city, find out who had a good flag and display it the right way, and they got credit for that. The heaviest flag, I forget who made it, but it's 3,000 pounds, and it covers more than a football field. And no, it wasn't Anchor Supply. I thought it was Anchor Supply, but somebody else made it. But Anchor made a big one for the football field.
Yeah.
But I looked it up recently, and it looked bigger than a football field. It's wired football longer, and it's 3,000 pounds. Had to have everybody hold it because so much weight. But
Yeah.
Anchor made a big one, though.
They do use one up at Indianapolis for a football game. And I know a veteran who was able to do that, along with his service dog, which they had to give him naturally special permission
Yeah.
to bring his service dog in there
Yeah.
and watch the game. And I'm very proud of him for going through all the paperwork to be able to do it.
Yeah.
That service dogs, federal law and state law, that you can't
I know that.
bar them from coming in your
Yeah.
business.
Yeah, but this was, they fought corporate on that, and they won.
Yeah, we were in Minneapolis, another game, and they let cancer patients hold the flag, but it covered about 1/3 of the field, but it was still hard for them to hold it.
Yeah.
They gave him that. But in World War II, I took care of a guy named Kenneth Huntley. He's from Winslow, Indiana, and he lost 4 of his friends in World War II. So he felt so bad, he went to the state or the city-county building in Pike County, that would be Petersburg, and he spent about 4 years in there, and he took all the records. He did 2,700 to 3,000 records of any person in that county that was in war, and he sent to the World War II Museum. World War II Museum has a file of everybody, and they have 1.6 million entered out of 16 million veterans. So we got that's about 15% done, or not much, but he did 3,000. Nobody's even done that many. We put it in the library, we put it on the internet, but he did everybody in Pike County. He scored 32 out of 36 points in a basketball game, so he also played a lot of basketball in the Marine Corps, but he also was a dog man, and he had to sniff it out. He was at Iwo Jima, and they'd sniff it out and so dogs became important. They trained him down off the coast of Alabama. There's a little island out there, and they trained dogs down there, and they tried some nitrogen mustard and some other things down there.
VFW puts out a little pamphlet about flags, and I was at 1114. I picked some up, and I brought them here and put them out on the table.
Good. That would probably be more descriptive than what I did. That's great.
Yeah, and I thought everybody, and that was before I knew you were coming to do this.
Yeah. Well.
So,
Any other questions? Son, you got any questions on things? Anybody at your school know much about flags? Yeah, well, they probably know some. Central High School is a good school. A lot of veterans in their hallway there have their Hall of Champions. You ought to read about it, all the people from Central have done. They got the glass wall and they got all the things there. It's amazing what, graduates of Central High School have done. Just absolutely amazing, Okay, well, thank you for letting me come here, and hopefully that's a little bit what you wanted. Joe didn't tell me exactly, but he talked about flags, so that's what we got. Yeah. Thank you. Good evening now.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, appreciate it.